Is Jordan Love ever going to be healthy this season? Well, let's talk to his rehab specialist, Dr. Sam Wagner, on today's show.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast to iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet. And the show for fans to know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. No crossover today because there's no game for the Green Bay Packers. So with injuries right now, the big topic of conversation with the Green Bay Packers, I wanted to have someone who knows all about not just athlete injuries, not just professional athlete injuries, not just a little bit about, let's say, Jordan Love's injury. How about the guy who is helping him rehab from an MCL injury, from a groin injury, and who also works with guys like Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks. This is Dr. Sam Wagner, and he is a really interesting guy, local guy to Appleton, and so he works with Jordan Love. You follow him on Instagram. You see all the work that they're putting in. You'll hear it's actually not his dog. It is Jordan Love's dog, who he is dog sitting right now throughout the interview. But this is a fascinating conversation and not the kind of thing that I personally have ever heard on another show ever. I've never heard this level of detail specifically about players currently playing, star players, and also just how this process works, what guys go through every week to get ready. I learned a lot. I hope you learn a lot as well. Let's talk to Dr. Sam. Joining me now from the rehab lab, you may have seen him on Instagram. Jordan Love's Instagram. He's worked with a number of different Green Bay Packers. Dr. Sam Wagner joins me now. And Sam, this is a pleasure to be with you. I think for a lot of fans, the sports science of training, of injury recovery, of rehab is kind of this like mystical place that we don't really understand. And like, you know, you go through your Instagram page and I see Jordan Love. It looks like he's got electrodes strapped to his chest and he's doing medicine ball workouts. Like, can you just from a 30,000 foot viewpoint explain why athletes come to you for help?
Yeah, I think, well, first off, thanks for having me, Peter. I'm a huge fan of the podcast. But with that, a lot of guys come to see me for those little extra nuances. The training staff at the facility is top notch as far as NFL teams go. And some of the guys like to have a little bit of a separation. You know, they're there all the time and they want to get their own work in. But a lot of guys just want to stay on top of their body and the things that they need to do to manage the duration of a full NFL season. So a lot of guys would come to me for more soft tissue and rehab focused stuff. Of obviously we're not training intensely in an off season, but it's more so, okay, how can I get primed and ready to go, not only recovered on a Monday after a game, but then ready to go so I can perform at my best come Sunday.
So I think that even there is a good place to back up for a second, because you'll hear a coach say, we're going to have the guys in for a flush workout, those kinds of things. Like the idea of someone coming in on a Monday after a game, after you just went through 50 car crashes or whatever it is, like this is a physical demanding game, to come in and have rehab work. Number one, why do you do that? And number two, what does that entail?
Yeah. So, I mean, exactly like you said, those guys go through so many collisions and so many different things. Their body gets contorted in all these different ways. They're creating contact, they're absorbing contact, and their bodies are beat up after. So again, Mondays, they'll go in and do a light flush workout in their meetings, but then after it, They need more specific work. And so the recovery day, basically on Mondays, is a lot of soft tissue work, a lot of things where there's aches, pains, knots, maybe some minor injuries that we need to let's just calm the inflammation down. Let's just calm the body down. Let's get everything to start to work its way out. Because a lot of the times those guys will have, and you've played before, right? After a game, you have that residual soreness. So it's literally head to toe. We're covering every single base. Then once we get to more midweek, that's more of, I'll do a little bit more of a movement or a workout in there of, let's just really focus on really strengthening the key areas that need to be strengthened. If we have an injury, let's make sure that the muscles that got injured, we can fire those back up and not have anything that shuts down, like different biomechanical compensations. And then the day before the game, morning of the game, that's more what I like to call a neurological priming. So let's get everything feeling really good. Let's get the body primed for a pretty intense event, being the game, and make sure everything is firing. All the fast twitch muscles, the quick twitch muscles, get those really ready to go. So by the time it's kickoff, there's not really anything lagging behind.
So you're saying a player on a Wednesday, they might have practice and they might come see you.
Correct. Yeah. So I have the guys I see on Wednesday. I see them every single Wednesday pretty consistently. There's 3 to 4. They'll have a full day of practice, and then we'll do some soft tissue work. But then, I think the biggest thing, without getting super nerdy, I love talking about this stuff.
Let's get nerdy, man. That's why you're here. It's a bye week. Let's do it.
So the body, you kind of look at it in 3 phases. It's more of like what I call a global approach, which is more neuromuscular, neurological, a more like a regional approach, which is going to be more specific, like a joint area, and then a more localized approach, which is going to be specifically the soft tissue of that area. So just because a guy's got a knee issue doesn't mean it's actually coming from his knee. His foot, could it be his ankle? Could it be his hip? Could it be his core?
Sure.
So addressing that full picture is really, really important, especially when you're looking at a full season, because yes, I can make the knee feel really good, but if the issue keeps coming back, we're going to just deal with this for the rest of the year, So how can we stay ahead of it or create some more preventative measures so that recovery, and if there is an injury, that time away from the field, instead of being here, we can get it back down to here.
And look, obviously I'm not trying to take business away from you, but why are players not able to get all this individual work from the teams? Is this just a comfort level, or why is that?
Yeah. And so again, like I said, the staff at the Packers is top tier. But I think when you look at
3 guys for 53, that's part of the reason, right?
Right. Yeah. It's for almost 70 because of the practice squad guys too. So again, right. That's part of it. It's just the hands and that focus. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's all right.
The hands and the focus for that is, can sometimes get misconstrued a little bit in the means of hey, it's just a time thing. There's not enough time to allocate to those guys specifically. Right. Whereas someone like myself, my other doc that works with me, that I've got him going with a couple players too, we're with them one-on-one for an entire hour. You're not getting passed off to do exercises or do this. You're working with the clinician the entire time, because these guys need the full hour, especially with what they do with their bodies week in and week out.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me. So please feel free to nerd out.
Okay, awesome.
I hope the audience is with me on this, but I think they will be, because this is something that I think is very opaque to a lot of fans. And so I know that you have to be careful as, a clinician, as a doctor, with a lot of this stuff. So let's speak in broad terms. If you have an athlete who may be dealing with some sort of ligament issue in their knee, and they come up a little gimpy on a groin injury, let's say, it would not be strange that a stabilizer muscle in a situation like that might react that way. Is that fair to say? Like, would that be a reasonable thing to assume could happen in a situation like that?
Absolutely.
And why?
Absolutely. Well, there's this issue that arises. It's called arthrogenic inhibition.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime there is an injury, certain muscles are just going to shut off and the main stabilizers are going to try to turn on.
Okay.
And there's overcompensations that will happen. Certain muscles will be way more active and others will be inhibited or just not functioning the way they should. And it's really important to work through to get not only the stabilizers, but those other muscles to turn on and do what they need to do for more longer term recovery. There's this whole sequence of things that happens, right? When someone gets injured, it's basically like punching a hole through drywall. The body's going to send all these cells to be healing, to be protective. But in those moments, it's basically like taking a big glob of spackle and throwing it on that wall. Okay. But what happens over time, right? Scar tissue will build up, pain will increase, range of motion will decrease if you don't smooth out that spackle. So every time an injury happens, that's describe what's occurring. And in that process too, a lot of our body's healthy cells will essentially shut down. So we need to work to wake those up, right? What's the main molecule, the main thing that heals everything? It's oxygen. How can we get more oxygen to the tissue? How can we get more blood flow to the tissue to get it to respond and do what it needs to do? And so that's been a huge part of my style of practice and what I do with all the players I work with and even the patients in my own office. I'm not in for a quick fix because that's just not realistic. The biggest thing is going to be sustained and proper care so that long-term we can be more, I guess we would say more preventative rather than reactive.
So much more with Dr. Sam Wagner coming up on Locked On Packers. Pre-alcohol probiotic drink by Zbiotics is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink alcohol, it gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break down this byproduct. Just remember to take Zbiotics and make that your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. This is something that is great for flights. I'm getting on a flight tomorrow, and it's the perfect thing to take before I have, a glass of wine or two, so that I'm feeling my best to get on an airplane. The last thing you want to be is hungover while you're traveling. So for best results, make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's rest. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. How do you change the way you approach players who? I wrote this piece about Christian Watson and the work that they did over at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, and Darnell Savage called hamstring injuries fast guy injuries because of the explosiveness of those guys. It seems to me, and please correct me if this is wrong, that you would want to train and work on recovery differently for, say, a defensive tackle than you would, say, a receiver versus a running back versus a quarterback. So can you dig into and explain how you might go about approaching the recovery for these different types of players?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is 100%, position specific, because what one guy needs in one position is not what a guy needs in another. Like the receivers and the DBs that I work with and the running backs, they are all so crazy explosive. Like if you try to motion their hips and their legs, they don't have a ton of flexibility, but that's because they don't need to be. They need to be quick twitch, explosive, be able to move right away. Whereas defensive linemen, offensive linemen really need a lot of shoulder and core stability to anchor down and to be able to create force and absorb force. So the things that I work on, say with like a defensive tackle or an offensive guard, is going to be different than anything I do with guys in the secondary. And position specific wise, it's a huge part of when I go to games and I watch the games. Yes, I watch the game to see what's happening, but I'm really more clued into how is their body moving, you know, because after you do this for a while, you can pick up nuances. Okay, some guy's set was off because he didn't look like he was strong in his core, stable in his core. Or that receiver tried to get out of that break and it looked like he just didn't have enough acceleration to get in and get out super quick. So is there something going on with his foot? Is it pronating or is it supinating? And there's just little intricacies like that. And I feel like without getting lost too much in the weeds, it's really comes down to what does the player do? And then how can we help maximize that to the best of their ability?
Yeah. One of the things that happened, Jayden Reed gets drafted by the Packers and they say, hey, we'd really like you to put on a little bit of weight. As you know, a physician who is trying to help a player like that, how do you make sure that they can maintain, you know, you put on, let's say 5-8 pounds of hopefully good weight. It seems like in Jayden Reed's case, it was good weight. He has a historic rookie season. He's top 10 in yards, like all the good stuff that he's had this season. How, from a recovery standpoint, can you help a player like that who is maybe loading more on his body than he's ever used to in the past?
Yeah. And it's 100% goes back to where are their main anchor points. So for him, carrying more weight, he's got to be really, really strong through his torso, through his core. Everything anchors to there, his legs, his shoulders, his upper body. How can we really, really emphasize, yes, he's strong. All these guys are freaky strong, but are they strong in the correct places? So for someone like him, getting into the more internal stabilizers, getting more into the deeper core musculature to get that to be more active. You know, because like the analogy I like to give those guys is like a Yeti water bottle. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Okay. So like a Yeti water bottle, right? You put ice in it yesterday and it's still cold today. That's because the inner layer is doing the work. That outer layer, you put all your stickers on, your breweries that you go to. That's like your six-pack, right?
Yeah.
Again, that serves.
I don't know how many breweries Jayden Reed and, you know, Jordan Love are going to, but yeah, you and I get to do that.
Yeah, exactly. But that very similar to the Yeti water bottle, it's the same exact thing, right? That six-pack is, you know, it's great, but then long-term underneath, that's what's doing the work. So how can we get that to fire up and be more stable and more durable, you know, long-term?
Your dog wants to get very involved in the conversation. He's into you being nerdy, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, you know, look, again, I don't want to get you in trouble in any specific way, but like I know that you hear about like the one of them that comes to mind is like Ricky Fowler has sort of preternatural ability to turn his shoulders, which is why he's able to get such a deep shoulder turn on his golf swing. When you're working with someone like Jordan Love, are there things that are like special about their bodies that allow them to move the way, like you don't see quarterbacks who can do the things that he can do. Like it seems like you'd have to tailor something very specific, even if you worked with, let's say, Jordan Love and Sean Clifford, that like you would not be able to put together the same program for those two guys because their bodies just move so differently.
Yeah, I mean, and so that's a great, because I work with both of them and it's very different. They're both quarterbacks. They both have similar patterns, but their body types are different. How they move is different. You know, like Jordan, he is really flexible.
You can see that on the field, by the way. Like you can see the flexibility in the way that he moves.
Yep. And just in compromised positions, right? And there's, you know, one of my mentors always used to say, you double your flexibility, you quadruple your strength. Because you have to think about it as a quarterback, as you're on the move, as you're doing these things, you're going to get off balance, right? You're going to be throwing on the run. You're going to be absorbing contact while you throw. And in those positions, he still is really strong, but that's because we train in that, and like, so a perfect example last year against the Saints, if you remember that fumble that went back and then he almost did it looked like a baby giraffe.
Oh yeah. And so he slipped and did the splits.
Yeah. Right. And a lot of people would have probably messed up some leg injury of some sort, but he was strong enough in that position that I was like, okay, no big deal. Like his bot, we train in that stuff. So that's one thing that's like really unique. Again, because player to player, yes, they're both quarterbacks, but they move differently. And how can you emphasize and maximize that? Because one of the biggest strengths, and following the Packers for Jordan, is being mobile and on the run and stepping into throws. And so how can we really help to maximize that even more? Because that guy, and maybe it's bias, I think he can easily be the best quarterback in the NFL. That's not even a doubt in my mind. The throws he can make, things he can do. So how can we just help his body perform and continue to do that for him?
What do you think, like from a biomechanical standpoint, and like I understand we are getting in the weeds here, but like you have the knee, the groin, those kinds of things. How does that impact the chain of events that has to happen from, hey, I want to get to my back foot to throwing the ball? Like what are the kinds of things that you're trying to protect against? Because the body does have to find ways to compensate for not having 100% strength there.
Yeah. So in those instances, right, a lot of the stuff that we'll go through is like replicating his drop. And so for example, some of the equipment I use, right, you kind of referred to it before. It's called an arc neuro, where we have different electrode attachments. And basically your brain will contract muscle 2 to 25 times per second, but your brain will contract muscle 2 to 25 times per second, but this machine can do it up to 500. So it supercharges the rehab, right? And so
that's a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. When muscles and stuff shut down in those positions, how can we get the body to know that, okay, this needs to fire, this will fire, this will fire? Because, right, like you talked about, an MCL, a groin, somewhere in that chain, there's a disconnect. And if we can find it, then it's going to be more beneficial long-term.
Is Jordan Love going to be healthy the rest of the season, or are these injuries going to dog him till the offseason? We'll make Dr. Sam answer that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. And if you win that first $5 bet, that's easy. That's all you got to do. Just go to FanDuel.com. All the stats right in there. You can place live bets, same game parlays, futures bets. It's all in there for you. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest and best way to play daily fantasy sports and win money while you do it. This week, Jamar Chase, more than 79.5 receiving yards, and Patrick Mahomes, more than 1.5 passing touchdowns. That sounds like a good one to me. Or how about Travis Kelce, more than 59.5 receiving yards, and Saquon Barkley, more than 79.5 rushing yards. Travis Kelce he got targeted to near death the other night. They're going to continue that, even with Nuke Hopkins. I'm telling you, and Jamar Chase, no T. Higgins. That's a lock. Oh, okay, it's not actually a lock, but it's something close to one. That's happening. Come on. Download the app, Prize Picks, and get a $50 instant bonus when you play that first $5 bet. I was so excited. I lost my place. I'm so excited about Prize Picks. Let's go. Let's do this. Download the app and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play that first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. I would be remiss if I did not ask you, to the best of your ability to tell me, can Jordan be something close to 100% the rest of the season without sitting?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's definitely doable, and it's definitely something that we're continuing to progress towards. You know, and I think it's one thing that this bye week is at the perfect time for these guys, and just giving his body some more time to heal and relax. And then once he gets back, we'll continue to get after it to keep him where he needs to go and continue to stay in that trajectory.
The last thing I want to ask you about here is, look, you're not a vibes doctor. That's why we have Lily Zhao here on the Locked On Packers program. But you do have a chance to be around these players, to see how they work, to see, you know, their personalities. What are the vibes right now that as best as you can relay them to us?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, these guys are all just incredible people. They're not only exceptional athletes, and they're talking Super Bowl in that locker room constantly. You know, and like they know that the Lions, that wasn't their best game, but all of them have told me they know they're better than them. They just beat themselves. So the confidence is really high. It's just a matter of continuing to put the pieces together of the locker room. Everyone that I've talked to, they say it's the best it's ever been. Everyone wants each other to succeed. There's no egos across the board, which is, you know, that's kind of unheard of in an NFL environment. And these guys all just want to see each other win. And I think that's the coolest part, that there's a buy-in. It's different. You know, I've been around other teams. I used to do some stuff with some Bears guys. Like, it's different. The environment is different.
Please, no, thank you for ending on a little smack talk with the Chicago Bears. We always appreciate that around here. Sam, this has been wonderful, elucidating for me personally. I hope the audience has found it to be useful as well. And you know, hopefully maybe in the off season we can check back in and talk about off season work and some of that cool stuff, because there's so much more that I think we can get into here. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely. I would love to dive into this. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm a huge fan of you and what you guys do. So if I can ever help in any way, I'm all about it. And it's an exciting time to be around this team for how young they are. And just, you know, like it seemed like last year we were playing with house money a little bit, and now it's like really cool to see the trajectory in the future, and it's super bright.
All right. Thanks to Dr. Sam for joining the show. That was incredibly fun. Thank you so much to him. As I mentioned at the top, I have never heard that on a sports podcast. And I hope that you found it as enlightening as I did, even if, you know, a lot of the words I didn't quite understand. I tried to follow it as best I could. But I think there's a lot of just really insightful stuff in there. And hopefully he's right about Jordan getting healthy. Hopefully, you know, he says the knee is not bothering Jordan. You've got the groin injury. Hopefully they can rest that. They can do all they can. And they'll get him right once the Packers have to play the Bears. That's coming up next weekend. Tomorrow we do our self-scout. What do the Packers do well? What do they not do well? What kind of tweaks might they want to make? That's coming up tomorrow on Locked On Packers. In the meantime, follow me on all the social medias, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on all the social medias, Locked On Packers. Go subscribe on YouTube. We won't be live this weekend because there's no game, but we will be live next weekend and all the subsequent weekends when the Packers play, so you can stay Locked On Packers.